ChatGPT is one of those things that it feels like everyone is using. And maybe you've tried it out at various stages or different AI apps, and you're just like, it's okay. I don't know what the big deal is all about. Well, if that is you and you've dipped your toes into ChatGPT or AI and it's come up with middling kind of results, this is your cue to pay attention because you may be surprised at just how much ChatGPT has changed and how much it could be helping you in your life and business in ways that you don't even know. If you're a ChatGPT skeptic, this one is for you. I'm going to take you through some of the ways that I'm using ChatGPT in my day-to-day life and in my business, and little tips and tricks to make the most of it and not get sucked into ChatGPT's flattery. So the AI landscape, it is changing. It is changing faster than any of us could imagine or comprehend. It feels like every week there is something new, and ChatGPT and other AI apps are just accelerating and are going to continue to. The types of things that we can do now, even compared to a year ago or even 6 months ago, is phenomenal. And if you compare it to what AI apps were like sort of even 2 or 3 years ago, when a lot of the content that it produced, sure, it was okay, or you could use it as a bit of a starting point. Now with the new features that are available in things like the ChatGPT Pro plan, it is creating content that is much closer to your voice without you having to have 1,500 prompt libraries and do a whole lot of stuff to make it do that. Yes, you can certainly train it to create even better results, but straight out of the box, standard ChatGPT without getting any apps or programs or anything else is pretty damn amazing. I just would encourage you. I was actually talking to someone the other day who I was like, hey, why don't you get ChatGPT to do this thing? It was actually my children's grandfather who wants to write a memoir. And they were like, oh, yeah, well, we could put it. I said, just put the ChatGPT app on his phone and get him to speak his stories and his ideas into ChatGPT. It transcribes it for you, which is amazing. And they were like, oh, yeah, but what prompts do I have to put in? Because when they had previously used the app, 6 months ago or 12 months ago, you had to put prompts in. So if you just started talking, you couldn't even talk 12 months ago, it just wasn't really particularly helpful. You'd have to kind of know what to put in to get anything good out. Now, I still think that is the case, but it is a lot more flexible and able to take your rambles and turn it into actual usable information. So if you've tried ChatGPT and it hasn't worked for you, please keep coming back to it. Keep coming back and looking at these things because the amount of change is absolutely phenomenal. Now, I have actually ditched a lot of my AI tools. I buy software instead of handbags. It's my little fun thing that I like to do. I love software. I love trying things out and being like, oh, what can we do with this? And I have bought quite a lot of software tools, a lot of AppSumo, lifetime deals, and a lot of those tools had a specific purpose. For example, I had a tool that would help turn YouTube videos into blog posts. And it was great. It was certainly very helpful. I didn't have to know prompts. And prompts are the things that you put into ChatGPT to get it to produce a reasonable outcome. You can't just cut and paste the link to YouTube and expect it to know what to do. However, what I have found is a lot of those tools that I've had in the past, the things that I've bought, are less helpful than they were before because a lot of that software was basically the prompt wrapped up for you so you didn't have to think of it. If it was a podcasting AI app, the prompts would be baked into the software, telling it to create show notes. It would be telling it to create titles and all of the other things to go along with podcasts. So you didn't have to have a library of prompts to do all of those things. For me, I have found that I'm just not going and actually using a lot of those tools that I've bought because I just go straight to ChatGPT to do it now. I'm able to get the same or very similar results by training it with some basic information, sometimes not even training it at all. If I don't train it at all, sometimes consistency with the output can be a little bit of a challenge. But some basic training for how you want that output to be means that I don't need to have it's like with Kajabi. I don't need all the different logins to all the different tools to achieve the things that in the past, even 18 months or even 12 months ago, now I just use ChatGPT Pro. It is definitely the best $20 a month that I spend in my business for the amount of time saving and for the value that I get out of it. So I'd really strongly encourage you to look at that if you're not already doing it. You can do the free ChatGPT plan, but the thing that has made the difference with ChatGPT Pro for me is that you get the memory feature. And one of the problems that I had in the past, and one of the problems that a lot of these paid tools sort of got around, is that you had to basically start from scratch every time. You had to prompt it every time, remind it of who you were and what you did, and give it some information, some context, so that it was able to do the thing for you. But you had to start over every single time, which is why people were using tools and prompt libraries and all that kind of stuff. It made it a little less user-friendly. However, the memory function now allows ChatGPT to remember things that you've told it and refer to it. So when you are, going off on your rambles, I'll talk about some of the things that I've been doing in a sec, and kind of feeding it that core information about yourself or your business. It will remember those things and reference them in future chats. And that is where I found it to be incredibly valuable. If I'm giving it links for things, I don't have to remember and then go and add them in manually afterwards or program it in somehow. If I say it once, hey, when you're referring to this, use this link, every time from that point onwards, it's going to just put that link into the output, which, even just that I would pay $20 a month for, because that is one of the most annoying and frustrating things. So like, oh God, I've got to go and get the links. That memory context, is fantastic. I have got so many ChatGPT prompts, but what I found is even when I had a tool to help me create, access the saved prompt library, is I had so many things, it was kind of a bit of a grudge and an effort to actually go and find the right prompt or try and play around with prompts. So I found for me that's eliminated a lot of that. I can go back to some simple instructions, and I effectively treat ChatGPT as if it was like a VA or a team member, a person. Treat it like it is a human, which is kind of a little weird, but not in terms of the fact that it is a human. I mean, sometimes it kind of talks back to you as if it is, which is a little freaky. But if you are giving it instructions, think, well, how would I give a person these instructions? If I wanted to ask someone to do this for me, what would I tell them? What context would I give them? So when you're actually asking it to do things, and this is one of the reasons why I love the voice chat feature, you can just say, hey, when you're doing this, make sure you use the standard call to action, or use my podcast format for this. But something to remember as well, when you are using it as an employee, just like an employee, when it is new and unfamiliar and not used to the way that you like to do things, you've got to give it information. You couldn't just say to a random brand new employee, all right, write me podcast show notes, and expect that employee to know what structure and format that you liked. The employee could come back to you with a format, and you could be like, oh, okay, I like how you've done that, but could you change that? And then they'll know that going forward, just like ChatGPT will. So it's keeping your expectations realistic. If you, get a format that you like for something, be like, okay, great, I really like how that's formatted. Could all of these things be formatted that way in future? Just like you would do with an employee. So think about treating it a bit more like a human when you're trying to give it instructions, and you'll probably get a lot better of an output. It is not going to be perfect every time, however, so do bear that in mind. I'll come to some pitfalls of ChatGPT afterwards, but just like the output of a team member or someone that is your employee is not going to be perfect every time. You're going to need to refine. You're going to need to go back and give additional instructions and say, oh, actually, I don't like how you've done that. Could you do it this different way? When there is something that you like, being like, yes, that's great. You can help it. You can get it to help you create that format. That can be something that you can do, just like you would do with an employee if you were doing something brand new from scratch. So just tend to think of it like that. Don't get your expectations that it's going to be some magic tool that's going to, mean you don't have to do anything. You will have to put some work in to get some work out. It's just that it is a lot easier now, I have found, than it has been in the past. So how I am using ChatGPT, I'll share a couple of the ways that I'm using it. And one in particular that I've found really helpful when I am doing these live streams is this daily live stream potentially is a lot of work. When I have done daily live streams in the past, I felt like it has taken pretty much my entire day to get ready for the live stream and to actually present the live stream. And that there's a lot going on. There's a lot of pieces. You've got to get this, things ready. But how I've found that I'm able to do this and I'm able to present some information and a topic every day. This will be a limited time, however, is that I'm using ChatGPT. Firstly, the first thing that I did with ChatGPT at the very beginning of this was I got hundreds of ideas for topics. I was like, all right, this is the type of thing that I'm wanting to achieve, things like this. And I kind of just brain dumped some ideas. And I was like, can you give me some other topics that are going to be relevant to my audience, things that people might find helpful? These are the types of questions my clients ask me. And it then gave me hundreds of ideas, which gave me not just actual ideas and specific things that I have done in this series, but it gave me things that made me think, oh, I could twist that. I could put a Sue twist on that. Or, oh, I really like that. What if we did that? Like, it kind of sparks your ideas, as well as just gives you straight up, lists of ideas. So for each idea, what I do is I'll pretty much just brain dump and say, all right, this is the topic that I want to talk about. Here's my thoughts about this. And I will just pretty much verbally vomit into my ChatGPT app. Just before I got onto this live stream, I'm prepping for tomorrow. So I sat on the couch and just, dumped all of my ideas about that topic. And then what I ask it to do is to give me suggestions for any other things that might help make the topic more rounded, things that I might have missed. And I will then go through those and be like, oh yeah, that's a great suggestion. We'll add it in here. Here's what I think about it. And then I'll ask ChatGPT to turn that into talking points for me. I'm someone who has probably too many ideas. And if I tried to do a live stream without a list of talking points, it'd probably be 3 times as long. You would get all the Sue rambles. We'd get cross topics and start talking about stuff that was maybe less relevant, and it would be a bit more of a jumble of ideas. So basically, I give ChatGPT my jumble of ideas. I'm like, all right, let's organize this into a bit of a structure and a flow that makes sense. Once I've got my talking points, I then ask it to create me a live stream description. It then uses all that information because it knows what the live stream is going to be about, because we've just organized the talking points, and I get my live stream description. I'm still using Canva for the graphics, but that's because I've got a template. So all I've got to do is change the words, export, and done. I then get it to write the daily reminder email that is going to go out. And after I have done the live stream, I will just pull the transcript for this. I will put it into the exact same chat, and I'll then be like, here's the transcript. Can you use this transcript to give me a podcast notes? A podcast show notes. I'll get the YouTube description. I'll get tags for YouTube. I'll get titles, suggestions, all of the things that I need. I'll be able to turn it into a blog post on the list. Haven't quite got there yet, but I've got it there ready to do that. Which is phenomenally helpful. If you are doing that for actual course content and not, say, specifically a live stream content, because you could absolutely do the same thing if you were going to be creating course lessons or full content plans, workshops, etc. You will then have all of the information, all of your ideas, your talking points, and potentially the transcript for the lesson or piece of content that you actually create, that you then have fed ChatGPT with a whole lot of information and context to be able to create you promotional posts, sales pages, checkout copy, email sequences, like all of the things that you need to do to be able to promote your product, your course, etc., to be able to give you lesson notes. You are feeding it the stuff that can then save you so much time. Now, in the past, pre-ChatGPT, when I've done these kinds of things, the reasons why it has burnt me out is not because of the live stream. I love the live stream. That feels like the easiest part. It's all that work that goes into before and after, and it can feel really overwhelming. So being able to do this and just be able to shortcut a lot of that process is phenomenal. I've been creating sales pages at the moment. And again, the same thing, I'm able to put in my ideas, say what this is for, say who it's for, just kind of brain dump all of that kind of information and then get, really helpful copy out of it. One of the things that I so often find when I'm working with clients and auditing their Kajabi sites, or they're just coming to me for advice about their digital creator business, is I'll get them to tell me about their offer, the thing that they are selling and who it's for. And then I'll look at their sales page. And so often the sales page does not reflect barely any of what they've just told me, because the sales page is being written in a salesy way. And a lot of that stuff where you just tell someone what you're doing and who it's for gives you much better language to then use on your sales copy. So I've found that by verbally sharing what I'm doing, I'm able to get a much better result than if I type it in. Now, that is going to be different for everyone. I'm a verbal processor, as you may have picked up. I talk a lot. So I have found I'm able to kind of harness that. But even just the talking, even, you can do things like ask ChatGPT to ask you the questions so you can reply to the questions. In the past, I've asked my clients questions and I've then fed that into ChatGPT to be able to get better information and ideas and talking points and things like that out of their content. So yeah, but one of the things that I love the most about doing that with your content, whether it is, the full content or individual lessons, is when you do it in one chat, you can put all of it into one chat and then you can get all of that information back out in terms of sales page. You're like, all right, now write me an email. Okay, write me the, closing tomorrow email. Have you got suggestions for the call to action button? Like, you can do all those things because it's all captured in one chat together. Voice mode. Like I said, it is my secret weapon. It is the reason why I now have, I don't know if I say a love affair with ChatGPT, but why I'm using it significantly more than I have in the past. It feels like I've unlocked some kind of cheat code. I talk way faster than I type. When I type things out, it's kind of like my brain's doing two things at once. And I'm pretty sure that there's some neurodivergence happening in my world, undiagnosed. However, when I'm able to just talk and not think while I'm talking and just pretty much dump my ideas, that is when ChatGPT is able to take that brain dump, that sort of garble of ideas. I can get it out of my head, which is also really helpful because it's one less thing that's going around in my head. But I'm not kind of editing myself as I'm typing, because I find when I type, I'm trying to think about what I'm typing. Sometimes I'll lose an idea or a train of thought, because I just can't get it out fast enough. So just being able to not censor myself and just ramble is fantastic. And it helps me then organize the thoughts, because often I'll have these really great ideas. I'm an ideas person. There will never be a lack of ideas in my world. Often there are too many ideas. So sometimes, that will be what I do. I'm like, all right, I'm going to give you all my ideas. Help me pick the best one, or help me, work out pros and cons, etc. But it's just being able to organize the ideas and being able to just sort of dump everything and then not have it just sitting there and you having to manually fish through it. It's that time saving of doing that has been something that is absolutely phenomenal. Now, if you are someone like me who likes to ramble and likes to talk, do bear in mind that there is a 10-minute limit on the rambles. When I first started using the voice feature last year, and I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to, get all these things done. I would go off on tangents and I would ramble for so long. And I'd be like, oh, this is so great. I'm so glad it's recorded. Not realizing that it finished at the 10-minute mark and I was still talking at the 17-minute mark. And then all of that was lost past 10 minutes. So definitely make sure to bear in mind, like, be conscious. It does a little kind of vibration in your hand. I have an iPhone, so when it gets to 10 minutes, it does like a little boop and I'll feel that. But just keep an eye on the time as you are talking so that it's not going to cut off. What I'll do is I will just, if I'm watching the clock, I'll say, please don't start anything yet. I'm going to add more to this. I will then wait for that to process, which is another point I'll talk about in a second. And then I'll press go. And so it will be like, okay, cool, please continue, rather than going off and starting before you've got everything out. And then I'll just start another voice chat and give it the rest of it. Usually 2 is enough. If I'm getting to the point where I need to do more than 2, it's probably way too much ideas for sort of one thing. I need to rein it in a little bit. Also, when I have been doing the transcription on my computer, again, undiagnosed neurodivergence, I am very impatient. So I'm like, all right, cool, finish talking, go to the next tab, do something else, thinking that it would work in the background. I have found that it has lost it. I need to wait for that to actually process on the screen. For some reason, when you click away, or even in apps on my phone, if I click away, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So just be patient, wait for that transcription. Generally, it doesn't take more than sort of 10 to 15 seconds to process it through. Then press go. There's a black key with it'll have an arrow on it. Send it to the chat and then continue. So just don't be impatient like me and lose some of the content that you've done. But it's not just for content. I found it super helpful for doing all sorts of brainstorming type of things. talking through my offer, like when I want to create something new, an offer or even a product where I'm like, all right, this is what I'm trying to achieve. I'm wanting to do a workshop about this thing. I'm thinking about, some kind of coaching or mentorship or program, for people that are in this place doing this thing. These are my ideas. Like just brain dumping, like I said, ideas and helping you to come up with ways, things that you might not be seeing, things that, organizing your ideas. Sometimes there's a lot of power in just, getting all the ramble thoughts and ideas, and then having that third party, which in this case is the computer, fishing through your ideas and pulling out the best things and presenting them back to you. These aren't necessarily new ideas. These are potentially things that you've had just packaged up, or, the good things are pulled out from the fluff. Working out how to position something. So being like, all right, this is what I'm trying to do. What are some angles? Like, what are the things that I'm missing? And is there anything that I haven't thought of with this? Who do you think that this audience should be for this offer if you haven't explained the offer? Or suggesting, telling ChatGPT about your audience and what you do, and saying, hey, can you give me some ideas for workshops that might be helpful? Give me some ideas for the types of things that may help them to achieve X goal. Like just sort of brainstorming through all those processes. It's not always going to be accurate. You really do need to actually check in with your actual audience, but it can be helpful for idea generation. If you're not someone that has a billion ideas, to help you come up with things where you're like, okay, cool. Like, and sometimes I'll even throw wild cards in, and I'll be like, give me your craziest idea. Let's, completely look at this from a different angle. And I'm sure you saw that little trend on social media a month or so back, where it's like, show me what a person from Australia looks like, and then show me, more, give me more. And it's that kind of vibe where you're just like, all right, go over the top, give me some crazy ideas. And that sort of going through that ideation process can be really valuable. It can help you refine your ideal audience. It can tell you things about your audience that maybe you didn't realize. I went through this process recently, and I was like brain dumping everything about my audience, going, oh, I feel like I've got two different audiences and I'm not sure where to focus, blah, blah, blah. And it came back to me and it was like, no, you don't have two different audiences. You have the same audience at different places on the journey. And that is so obvious. And I've heard that and I know that, but just, having that reflected is like, okay, all right, that's a different way to look at things. But also it can help you, refine in if you don't even know what your audience is. You could say, hey, these are people I've worked with before. These are my skills, just feeding it enough information and getting it to ask you questions is something that I've found, the most helpful for sort of brainstorming through those kinds of things. It is very helpful to come up with names. Not always, like sometimes when I'm going through naming things, it'll give me 100 names that I hate. And I'll be like, that is so cheesy. Can you stop giving me cheesy stuff? Please, make it more normal. I don't want a marketing name. I want it to be 3 words, not a whole sentence. But, going for, giving it the information about what it is, like your product, your offer, the thing that you are creating, and be like, help me name this. And then going back and forth with it, being like, oh, I like that angle. Could you give me more like that? And maybe it will come up with the actual name and you're like, you know what, that is pretty cool. Or it'll give you enough spark that you can come up with it yourself. In the past, I would have done this through multiple websites. There's tools and other things that I've used to help me go through that naming process. And I'm like, don't need any of that. We can just go to one place and go to ChatGPT. And I found that to be super cool. I've also used it to help me see and pull frameworks out of my content. So I'm currently in the process of redoing one of my programs, which is 30 days to 1K, to teach you how to create your first mini course. And in the process of going through, fed into it all of the current course. I was like, all right, this is all of the current course. I'm reorganizing things. I want to redo all the content and look at things that I've missed and things that I can improve. But I really want to pull some strong frameworks out of this so that I can use it in my marketing. I'm pretty sure this framework's there. Can you look through this and tell me what they are? And it was actually quite phenomenal how it was able to help me recognize and see these things that I can refer to as my frameworks. That's my IP, the things that I am teaching people. And instead of me having to sort of go through a process, which I've tried to do this in the past and found it a little bit frustrating. I'm like, I don't know if I really have frameworks. And it was able to look at what I've done and be like, well, here you do. How about these frameworks? It's helped me refine some of these things and give them sexier names, essentially, because that was my problem. I was like, well, this is just what I do, and it doesn't sound cool. But sometimes that sounding cool, it's all in the marketing. It's all in how you package your ideas and things that you do into a way that's really memorable for people. And ChatGPT is going to be able to help you do that. Now, there are some downsides, of course. The AI overlords that are potentially going to take over the world. I'm not going to go down that path. But some of the things are, it is overly flattering, especially right now. It seems to be recently there's a change where it is seriously validating to the point where you're like, are you just saying that? Like even today when I was doing the topic for tomorrow and I was brainstorming the content, it was like, this series is so brilliant. You're doing great work. And I was like, thank you. But it's easy to forget that is coming from a computer and it is programmed to make you feel good about yourself. So, sometimes when it tells you you're really brilliant, you do need to take it with a grain of salt and not just be like, oh my God, ChatGPT thinks it's good. It must be good. It's programmed to make you feel good. I get really frustrated with repetitive AI formulas, and the more I'm using it, the more I see the same formula come up, even in its responses, which I find incredibly ironic. And even when I'll say, don't do this specific formula, there's one that it drives me mental when it does it all the time. And it'll be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. Like, it is hilarious. Like, sometimes I feel like you should just do some banter back and forth just because of its hilarious responses when it does something wrong. And you're like, no, that's not what I asked for. And it will be like, oh my gosh, you're so right. You specifically asked me for that and I didn't give you that, and blah, blah, blah. It's pretty funny. Try it. But I've found that when I'm saying, don't use this formula, I've asked you not to use this, please don't do it again. It'll say, oh, Sue, you're so right. You've told me not to do that. And it slipped in again, blah, blah, blah. And then it'll say, all right, so I'm going to do blah, 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 and it puts the actual formula in. So like sometimes you're just not going to be able to get rid of it. So you can ask it to remove that formulaic writing, but I find even when I have put that into my, core instructions, it still comes through. So I'll often have to go back and say, could you just put it into my voice? And that's one of the reasons why I like talking into it, because it gets my voice, my tone, how I like to speak. I'm like, take the marketing out of it, take the formulas out of it, just give it to me in my tone of voice. The dashes drive me insane. That is what I was having arguments about with ChatGPT last week. And I put some of my responses on Threads because it kept, gaslighting me and going, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Yes, I won't do any dashes, and then putting them in again. And, basically apologizing to me for putting in dashes, promising me it will never put dashes in again. And then 2 posts later, putting them back in. I do have that programmed. I do sometimes just have to be like, oh my God, the dashes, stop with the dashes. And I have got it programmed to use Australian English spelling. In the past, when I've done that, the results have been disastrous because it would just give me like, oh, g'day, mate, chuck a shrimp on the barbie, and like super colloquial, over the top Australian, which I rarely use. It's more that I just want it to be spelled the correct way, not that I want to go into full on like, oka, g'day, mate type of language. I do find that sometimes when I'm refining, it doesn't love refining and refining and refining again. When you keep sort of going back and going, can we try this? Can we try that? Can we try that? Sometimes it'll end up rewriting itself so many times, you get away from what it is that you are trying to achieve. So when it gets to something that I'm pretty happy with, I'll say, all right, let's lock that in. That's the final version. And then I'll say, I just have one change that I would like to make. Keep using the final version with this one change. Because if I'll just say, oh yeah, that looks really great, could we make this one change? Sometimes it'll rewrite the whole thing. And then I'll be like, no, I didn't want you to do that. I just wanted you to change this one thing. And it'll be like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have done that. And then I'll rewrite it again. And it kind of, it's like that when you rewrite things, like when you photocopy something 100 times, like you lose that original, what you had, and it dilutes it. So sometimes I'll even, when I get close to what I want, will copy and paste it out into just a Google Doc or something. So that worst case, if we go down the path of refining, it won't redo the whole thing. If I'm doing longer pages, like sales pages, I was doing my homepage a few weeks ago, I actually break it down into sections and go through it section by section. Because what I find is if I try and give it feedback on the entire page, it then rewrites other sections that didn't need to be rewritten because they were already good as they were. So when you've got something bigger, like don't be afraid to be like, all right, so we're going to go through this section by section. And when I do that, and when I say, okay, that section's locked in, I cut and paste that section out just to stop it accidentally going into, oh, I want to make it better for you mode. Because often when it wants to make it better, it doesn't make it better. It can make it worse. So I will sort of go, all right, that section's locked in. Let's move on to the next one. Often that will work, but just as a bit of a backup to save me having to go back through screeds and screeds of text to try and find the original thing that I was happy with, I'll just cut and paste those bits out. And then I can cut and paste the whole thing back into ChatGPT and then do refinements on the entire page. But I find it works much better when you ask it to go through section by section. The thing with the memory that I do find frustrating, I love the memory feature. I love that it can remember things about you, but it does fill up really fast. I have to constantly go in and delete stuff. Sometimes when I am putting things in there, I'll say, don't save this to memory. I put a blood test result in a month or so ago, and I was like, all right, tell me, from this blood test results, tell me what I need to know. And it remembered all that stuff. So when I went into the memory, it was remembering things from the blood test, which I don't need it to remember. So it's got no, it doesn't choose what to remember. It just takes the things that you say. So if there's something where you're like, this doesn't need to be in memory. I was doing some meal planning and it was like, oh, you're in Malaysia and it's not easy to find cottage cheese because I'd made some passing comment when it gave me an option for that in my menu planning. I was like, we can delete that from memory. We don't need to worry about that. So there's 128 memory spots. I'm still trying to work out a good way to kind of consolidate those because it's not the length of the piece of content. It is that it has 128 slots. So if there is one slot which says, Sue McLachlan runs a business called the Unicorn Advisory and is a Kajabi strategist, and that's quite short, that is going to have as much weight as an entire paragraph with a whole lot of details about a program. So, I certainly am not going to be teaching anyone AI. I'm not an AI coach. I'm not going down that path. So I'm still learning myself. So I'm trying to figure out ways that I can make better use of that memory and better use of perhaps some core instructions so I can delete some of that stuff out of the memory, because it's a bit frustrating. It's like memory's full, and then you've got to go through and be like, all right, what have I told you in the last week that probably doesn't need to be kept in there? I have experimented with in that learning process, starting to use folders for things where the content is together. Like I've created a folder for the This Is What I Do If series and put some instructions that are relevant just for this. So then those instructions don't necessarily have to live in the memory. Still a work in progress. I don't know how that, is performing in the real world. I haven't done enough research to know if that's better than just leaving everything in the one giant list. Certainly helps for organization. So that's good. Do not forget, as much as chat, whatever you want to call it, is a really powerful tool. And when I say ChatGPT, that is what I am using. It could be whatever you are using. I know there's other tools like Perplexity and Claude and a whole lot of other things. I'm just referring to ChatGPT because that is what, I started using. It's what I'm using at the moment. But all of these things will invent facts sometimes. It will make stuff up. Even if you use your voice and you tell it exactly what to say, and it's really frustrating. You're like, I didn't tell you that. Where did that come from? Please do make sure that you actually check the outputs of what it has said carefully, especially if you're doing anything where there are specific facts and information that need to be correct. Sometimes it'll even just make stuff up when you've given it information because it's making assumptions. So read the output just like you would do if you were getting a team member to do it for you. If someone's going to give you and say, hey, here's this email, you would read it. You wouldn't just blindly put it into your system and send it out and hope for the best. So treat the content and the output that ChatGPT gives you in the same way to make sure that the information is accurate and it is correct. Do not blindly trust it. I've got some things that could help you if you're like, all right, all that you've said sounds really cool, but maybe a little bit advanced, a little bit beyond where I'm at the moment. So perhaps some things that you could try to test out the functionality of GPT in its current form. You could ask it to rewrite an old social caption. Go back to your social media, find a caption that you've written in the past, maybe a post that's done pretty well, and put it into ChatGPT and say, hey, could you rewrite me a different version of this? Or could you turn this social caption into carousels? And it will take that information and it will help you break it up. It'll give you a new post. You can then put that post out and it feels like you've done something new, but even though you're actually using your current information. If you've done live streams or any kind of training in the past, if you have a course, you could pull one lesson out of that. You could pull the transcript out of that past live stream or even just that one lesson that's part of your course. You could turn it into a blog post. You could turn that content into a social media post. So you could get that transcript and turn it into multiple things. So you could say, I'm going to cut and paste a transcript from the live stream I did about blah, blah, blah. Could you please turn that into a blog post? And it will then give you a blog post and you can go through and review it. And then you can say, okay, could you turn the transcript into 3 social media posts? Could you turn this into a carousel? Could you help me find some key talking points that I could take out of this and turn into reels? There's lots and lots of options where you can use things. So it's not creating things from scratch. It's using what you've already done and presenting it in a different way. So a different kind of repurposing. You could, like I said, put some information, say, hey, this is the topic that I want to talk about. Could you turn that into an email newsletter for me? So you can just brain dump an idea. You could ask ChatGPT to turn that idea into a blog post for you. So that's some ways that you could talk into it. And literally, you don't need to have any cohesive structure or anything like that. You can go back and forth with it and you can say, oh, that's really cool. Could you write me a stronger introduction? Or could we try 10 different subject lines so that you can help me make it better? Something that I've been really enjoying doing is brain dumping all of my ideas into a checklist. And part of that is like, oh my God, I have so much to do today. I've got all these things to do. Could you help me put it into a checklist? And then ChatGPT may give you some very helpful prompts like, do you need to be doing all of these things? Let's prioritize them. Here's, maybe you could leave this thing or just do this one thing on this aspect and then come back to that later. So it can help you prioritize and organize your tasks, especially if you have a busy mind. I have a custom GPT that I often refer back to. It is called Tasktacular. It is a procrastinator, ADHD brain person gem. And you pretty much just brain dump into it like all the things that you want to do and you want to achieve. And it'll ask you some questions with some witty banter. And it will then be like, all right, here's the one next thing that you need to do. Let me know when you've done it. So instead of seeing this massive list, you get one thing and then you're like, all right, I've done it. It's like, okay, the next most important thing that we've, identified is this. Do this, and it'll, give you some fun instructions. Let me know when you've done it. So there's things like that you can do that can make it a fun way. So you're not staring at a massive to-do list, but it's remembering all the things that you need to do. Outlining a lesson or a workshop idea using that strategy that I told you before. Again, brain dump, like use this as your dumping ground for your brain and free the space in your brain for other things. That is one of the things where I feel like it's been my best benefit to get all these ideas out and refined and decided whether it's an idea I want to go ahead with or not. Or if it is something that I want to go ahead with, I've then got that base to then move ahead and do things because it's already got my information. It's already got those things. I'm not starting from ground zero when I have that. And one of the other tips, you can put in a complicated thing. You can ask a question like, I don't understand this. Can you explain it to me like I'm 5? And it will explain things to you. It'll give you information. Again, not always 100% accurate, but this could be concepts for anything. Like he'll be like, oh, I've been hearing about this thing. Could you explain it to me? Like, I want to learn about, I don't know, the best way to learn Japanese. I just pulled that off the top of my head. Can you explain to me like I'm 5 where to start? There's, oh my gosh, there's a billion other things. Like I'm sure, there's tens of thousands people that have got ideas on ways that you can use ChatGPT. But my suggestion is just to start, talk to it, help it prompt you and ask it questions. You can put in the fun prompts that are going around. Like I put in and asked it to tell me about my strengths and weaknesses. I've seen cool things like, hey, using the information that you know about me, put me into a Lego set that came up with some cool results. there's so much that you can do. The possibilities are endless, and it doesn't have to all just be random stuff, and it doesn't have to be stuff that is potentially going to end the world. Use it to help make your life easier, save some time, especially if you're in a time, where you don't have a lot of energy. It can certainly shortcut some things for you. The magic happens, I find, when you bring your voice to it. That's been the biggest game changer for me, because I'm not trying to type in the right prompts or worry. I just talk. And when you talk, you don't overthink stuff as much. And it's now got the capacity to think through, get rid of all the fluff. It gets rid of the fluff in your rambles and helps you get to the point, which is super, super valuable. I hope this was helpful for you. Let me know how you are using ChatGPT and if you're going to try any of these strategies that I have shared today. I would love to know if you've got some cool tips and tricks, and if you've got some prompts for the cool things like, turn me into an action figure or any of those other things. Let's share and enjoy what ChatGPT can give us. Tomorrow on This Is What I'll Do If, we are talking about what to do when it feels like things aren't happening fast enough. It's a very common question I get from my clients, frustration, I would say, when it feels like I'm just not doing enough. It's not happening fast enough. I thought I'd be at this point by now. I'm going to talk through that with you, give you some reframes and some strategies, and probably remind you that you are actually doing much better than you think. That is tomorrow on This Is What I Do If. If you want to catch the replays or get any of the resources that have been available through this series, or subscribe to the podcast, go to theunicornadvisory.com/this, and you will be able to access everything on that page. I'm Sue McLachlan. I will see you back again tomorrow. Bye for now.